gotta touch.
There's a lot of mixed sensation. It is a book, but the fact that you can touch, it's almost like a touchable screen, almost like if it's a game. It's a great way to use computers.
My mother adored Peter. Peter would only perch on her shoulders. He mimicked her voice, her sounds perfectly. Once, believing I was home alone, I was startled by the sound of my mother's cough, but it wasn't my mother. It was the bird. Peter would always talk during quiet moments. Like when my grandparents were remarried. The quiet moments of silent prayer were filled with a loud, mom-like voice. "What you doing?" Our family enjoyed the humor in these moments more than the minister appreciated it. My grandmother was Alma Herson. I figured Herson came from the fact that her son was my father, Art. Alma was the type who always needed jokes explained to her. When watching television, she'd laugh her honking laugh, then ask, "What did they mean by that?" And by the time someone found the patience to explain it to her, she'd laugh loud and long again. Alma never did anything. We decided she was a hostess, you know, for all the parties that would naturally gather around my grandfather's piano. So this remarriage, their 50th anniversary party, would be the last time those words and music would be so fluent. Later, when my grandmother was struck with Alzheimer's, she carried two peculiarities with her disease. She had this remarkable ability to go back in time and remember in detail events of 40 years gone away. I always thought that ability must be of value to historians, but it also caused problems, like for 20 years Alma believed she couldn't have children, so who was I? The other thing about my grandmother's condition was how she retained her habits. In her home, space was always filled with jokes, music, stories, and Brooklyn colloquialisms and phrases. Perhaps what my grandmother did was keep the room filled with these happier sensations. She never allowed anyone to feel alone. Maybe she was like those women in Virginia Woolf novels where the mother fills the space with a loud, happy family, and when the mother's gone, everyone becomes lost in their own disjointed thoughts. Words fly past everyone, and the characters are too absorbed in their own self-pity to hear anyone else. With her own quirky personality, could Alma have been noble enough to glue this kind of space together? At one point, Alma could no longer remember words. Her thoughts seemed clear enough in those lost days, but the present was a blur. Her living family was a blur. She never became unconscious of empty space. She struggled to fill the silent moments. We learned how to communicate with no subject, no topic. Conversations jumped through topics like a word search for remember. During this time period, my own parents renewed their vows for their 30th anniversary. Because of the unpredictability of Alma, my grandmother was seated in the back of the room, where she might cause little disturbance to the ceremony. Everything was fine until the quiet moments of the vows. Alma couldn't hear the vows, and there was a room full of people who might be caught in the horror of their own thoughts. Without the sensation of laughing or a piano or the story of a Brooklyn accent, does the space have to be full of self-pity? My grandmother believed so. It didn't matter what she said, and since she probably couldn't find a reason to laugh, Alma began entertaining the room with the loudest gibberish that made Peter the parakeet sound poignant. Alma's long, loud syllables had no sense but much sensation. She allowed no one to feel alone. She would glue back everyone's presumed disjointed thoughts into one single idea, her screech. Alma would make a bird sound if it was in her head. We all knew my grandmother to be in her 80s when she died. But the night she died, my parents found inconsistent birth dates on various driver's licenses, certificates, other documents. Evidently, Alma was older than her husband. My parents were asked her mother's maiden name for paperwork surrounding the death. No one knew Alma's mother's maiden name. No one can name what Alma did moving through her life, and no one can say how long she did it.